You think about the ramifications of a PA profession, being on call, having to work nights, having to work weekends, having to stay over.
Having to chart.
All that comes off the table. It's all about just working 9 to 5 in a job that's extremely low stress. We were given work at home privileges. I worked from home 3 days a week.
Oh,
So I went to the office 2 days, and you can't do that in a clinical setting.
as a PA, having gone to PA school and worked as a PA and all the things I've read about it, I never ever knew that PAs could work at the FDA. So we're going to find out in this interview today how that happens, what you would do at the FDA, what your jobs look like. So if you're interested in learning about something that almost 99.999% of all PAs and NPs out there had no idea we can do, then stay tuned and watch this video. Hi, it's Michelle with the Medicine Couch. Thanks for joining me here today. I hope that you enjoy this channel and you enjoy learning about what it's like working in different medical specialties, but also finding these cool and unique opportunities. Now let's hear what today's interviewee has to say.
Well, my name is Philip LaFleur, and I was a physician assistant for 21 years. I went to school in my 40s, so it was a second career for me. And I'm retired now. I worked for the federal government for my entire PA career.
So tell us a little bit about your career path.
When I graduated from PA school, I had a friend who had done a preceptorship at the Bureau of Prisons. So I applied, and they hired me. I had no idea what I was getting into. I just wanted to get some experience. And once I was working in the Bureau of Prisons, I saw people in naval uniforms, and I asked one of them, why do they have Navy officers here at the Bureau of Prisons? And he explained what the United States Public Health Service was to me. So after about a month, I transferred to the United States Public Health Service. So I worked 9.5 years in the Bureau of Prisons and probably would have stayed. I really was thriving. I was doing very well there, but my wife died of cancer. And I didn't want to be in Kentucky. I didn't want to be in that house.
Yeah.
I wanted a change.
Yeah.
I knew an in the Public Health Service in Massachusetts where I grew up. And he said, well, the prison in Devens is hiring, but the FDA in Boston is hiring. And I thought, well, I'll go interview for both. So I called, and they were willing to interview me. And I liked the FDA option better. And so I spent 10.5 years at the FDA. I spent 3 years in Boston, then I transferred to Maryland.
So tell us a little bit about what you did at the FDA, because I don't understand what a PA does at the FDA.
The FDA hires, their entry-level job is called the Consumer Safety Officer. And a Consumer Safety Officer basically just protects the public from FDA-regulated products that are made unsafe. So there's 5 areas of industry that the FDA regulates. The big 3 are food, drug, and cosmetics, but they also do tobacco and medical devices. Anything that is used to treat patients in a medical setting is regulated by the FDA, from tongue depressors all the way up to MRI machines and everything in between. The way the FDA was founded, it was really meant to control the food supply. That started in 1909, 1911, around there. Food was being manufactured that was not safe. People were upset. So the government passed laws regulating food. Then in the 1930s, they developed antibiotics. And somebody got the bright idea to create a liquid version of sulfa drugs for children. And they dissolved it in a chemical that was poisonous to children. They dissolved it in ethylene glycol, which is antifreeze. And they killed some children.
Wow.
Roosevelt brought in the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1935, which vastly expanded the regulatory authority of the federal government over manufacturers. So our whole point is to protect the public. That's what we do. So if you're a consumer safety officer, you might be a nurse, you might be a medical doctor, you might be a lawyer, you might be an engineer. All you have to have is 30 hours of college credit in hard science. They'll hire you as a consumer safety officer. Now, they hire you and you're a toxicologist, you probably end up in tobacco. If you're a nutritionist, you're going to end up in food. If you're a biologist, well, it's hard to say. But a physician assistant is tailor-made, especially a physician assistant with 10 years experience is tailor-made for medical devices. They channeled me into medical device regulation because it fit my career field the best. But I could have worked in food. I could
Right.
have worked in tobacco. I
Mm.
mean, it's not unheard of, but it's not common. You're going to
Right.
go in the direction your training and experience is going to channel you. You can't learn to be a regulator in any regulatory agency. They train you in their laws, they train you in their methods and their system, their paperwork, their process. So you're starting from ground zero with everybody.
Yeah.
Like the medical programs are so much more effective if you have somebody who's trained in medicine who's administering medical programs. But the basic job, most of these agencies have a basic job that generally just requires some science
Oh, okay.
and doesn't really require you to have a degree, although most people did. You're
Yeah.
more likely to get hired if you have a degree. We hired a lot of people in the device center at FDA headquarters who were engineers. We didn't just want an engineer, like we were trying to regulate 3D printing. So we wanted an engineer who had a background in 3D printing
Okay.
because people started printing medical devices or medical device components out of 3D printers. Well, the structure of a molded piece, a blown molded piece, the structure of a forged piece, the structure of a 3D molded piece is very different. And the stresses that are put on that are going to determine its effectiveness and whether it'll fail or not. And you needed people who understood those
Right.
parameters in order to do that job. So
Yeah.
who they hire often depends on what it is they want them to do.
Yeah. So as a PA, what kind of devices did you work with?
My particular group, we did optical. We did, contact lenses, eyeglasses. And then the second group I was in, we did dental.
Huh?
It's all broken down by specialty. And usually there are some practitioners who are consultants. Like when we did eyes, we had an ophthalmologist who was our consultant. So we ran everything past her that we were working on if we didn't 100% understand what was going on. When I did dental devices, we had two dentists that we could go to and say, hey, I've got this dental cement and it's fast setting and it's supposed to be slow setting. And what are the clinical implications of that? And how should I manage, this company that's mislabeled their dental cement? Because mislabeling is a big problem in manufacturing. Companies make mistakes, and they don't mean to, and then you get a field failure and the people in the field make a complaint to the FDA and we investigate and we figure out where they mislabeled and what they mislabeled. And we decide, well, do you need to relabel it? Do you need to recall it? What's the most effective way to protect the patient? The very last job I had, and this was only for about a year before I left, was orthopedic implants.
Yeah.
So
I thought that there would be PAs inspecting cows and things like that.
there are
But
times, yeah, the PAs do go out and do farm inspections, but it's more general. They're looking at the feed. We regulate all food, human and animal. They're looking at the feed and make sure that they're not routinely serving medicated feed to cows, which is illegal, and that the feed is not moldy, which is dangerous, and that it's the proper type of feed. They're not just, giving them silage or giving them, just, grazing them on grass if they're beef cattle and they're claiming that they're corn fed or whatever. There's a lot of things a PA can adjudicate, but it's nice to have a vet available if you need a
yeah.
vet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a moment, but I have a great joke about a farm involving a brand new FDA inspector that I tell sometimes. We had a set of credentials that flapped open this way, but the bottom showed our badge. We carry a badge because we had the
Yeah.
force of the federal government behind us. And you get a lot of pushback from manufacturers and especially from people like farmers who tend to be kind of curmudgeonly and self-made. And so this brand new inspector's sent out to investigate or to inspect a farm, and he's brand new. And he goes out and he shows his credentials. And the farmer's old. He doesn't mind. He's like, it's not a problem, young man. He said, go wherever you want on the farm, but don't go in that field over there. And the kid gets a little on his high horse because he's brand new and he doesn't want to be told what for. So he pulls out his badge. He says, see this badge? He says, I have the power of the federal government behind me, and I'll go in any field I want to go in. The farmer's like, fine, young man, do whatever you want. So he goes about his business, and a few minutes later, hears this god awful screaming. Looks up, and there's the FDA inspector about 5 feet in front of his prize bull in the field that he told him to stay out of. And the FDA inspector's going, what do I do? What do I do? And the farmer goes, show him your badge. The FDA's note. The thing about overlap, Department of Agriculture, they do eggs. We do chickens. If a cow is alive, we inspect it. If the cow has been harvested, it's been slaughtered, they inspect it. And there's just a lot of cooperation. When I went after decorative contact lens manufacturers, I had to work with the Federal Trade Commission because they have authority over decorative contact lenses because they're not considered prescription. We have authority over prescription lenses, but decorative contact lenses are like red contact lenses, yellow contact lenses. They're real popular with kids. When they were doing like the Twilight series and kids wanted to look like vampires or they wanted to look like zombies, or they're manufactured out of the wrong plastics. They're manufactured with the wrong dyes. They're manufactured with sharp edges. We had a very vulnerable population, teenagers, wearing these things, not taking them out, not cleaning them properly. And people had to have corneal transplants. It was really bad. But we couldn't go after the manufacturers because we don't have the authority.
Oh.
So I had to work with the Federal Trade Commission. They had to co-sign the email that we sent out to about 200 websites saying, please don't sell these anymore. You're hurting children. You have this overlap between regulatory agencies, and that's where the thing with the cows comes in. Yeah. It's like, we don't want to step on agriculture's toes, but they don't want to step on our toes. We try to, and with state health agencies, we couldn't lock a manufacturer, but the Mass Board of Health could lock a manufacturer. So if I walked in and a manufacturing facility was just overrun with vermin, there's nothing I could do. But I could call my buddy at the state of Massachusetts Health Department and say, hey, this factory's overrun with vermin. He's like, oh, really? I'm going to go put a lock on it. Yeah. So, you learn to work with your colleagues.
So it's interesting with the whole thing about cows. I pretty much guarantee you 99.9999% of any PAs that you talk to would never think that a PA might potentially be out inspecting cow feed or anything like that.
Train. You go through training. It's a job where you learn from day one because nobody can train you how to do these things. You've got to learn the regulations, and then you have to learn how to enforce the regulations.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a whole nother career path. It's really just taking your base science knowledge and applying it, and medical knowledge on the devices and applying it in a different way.
It gives you a zeal because I knew what a medical device that didn't function properly. I knew the harm it could do.
Yeah.
If I had some sort of IV pump and my IV pump didn't work correctly, I could kill somebody. But when we were doing that type of work, I, as a physician assistant or our medical doctors, we'd often be called in as a consultant, sit in on a meeting with a group that we were not a part of, just to be the voice of experience.
Right.
Well, let me tell you, this is what happened in my experience. Like they talk about the manual. They put so much time and effort into the manual. I said, what happens when somebody opens a new medical device in a clinic? They toss the manual aside, they plug the device in, they take off all the plastic, and they start pressing the buttons.
Yeah.
It's got to be intuitive, it's got to be user-friendly, it's got to be idiot-proof, because they're not going to look on that manual till it doesn't work.
Right.
When all else fails, then you read the manual. I said, please design your devices with that in mind, because you're engineers. The first thing you're going to do is read the manual. A healthcare provider, especially a registered nurse, is not going to do that. Well, she's going to take your IV pump, she's going to hang it on an IV pole, and she's going to start pressing buttons. Yeah. So that's just the reality of life, in the field. And it was really a revelation to them to have someone in the room who'd actually treated patients and used IV pumps, or whatever device was being designed, so I just loved it. And I think once you're in it and you're doing it, it either really excites you or you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to leave here.
Yeah.
Some people really found it daunting and not fun and not interesting and not exciting. But those of us who stayed, we really became bonded over that desire to help and to do things right and to make sure stuff was safe. And boy,
Yeah.
God help the poor device manufacturer who deliberately did something, to make money. I mean, we desperately wanted to send those people to prison.
Yeah.
All of us,
Yeah.
there's nobody at the FDA who's in league with industry, maybe at the political level, but
Yeah.
not at our level.
Yeah.
So it was really satisfying, and you felt good about yourself when you went home at night, which is not always the case when you work in medicine. Sometimes
Yeah.
you feel like you've been thrashed with a thick stick.
Yeah. Or like what you're doing doesn't make a difference at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So when you went to the FDA, you did that through, you were still in the Commission Corps and did that through the Commission Corps. But I guess people, PAs or NPs, they can get hired directly with the FDA as a civilian. Like if they're too old, they're watching this, and like me, they're too old to qualify to get into the Commission Corps service. You still can work as a PA or an NP, like with the FDA directly.
And the beauty of being in the civil service is you only have to do 5 years to be vested.
Huh?
You do 5 years, you have a pension. Now you got to wait till you're 65 to get the pension, versus if you stay 30 years, you get your pension immediately. I think ultimately the difficult thing is figuring out what the entry level job is. When people came to me and they wanted to know how to get into the FDA, I could explain that to them. Go on USA Jobs, find consumer safety officer, apply for that job, and go wherever they send you and do your 2 years, and then you're in, and then you can kind of figure it out as you go along.
Okay.
Federal service, if that was what people were interested in, federal service. But a lot of people are not. I like the federal government, I like the uniformed services, so it appealed to me. But it's a fantastic option if you're looking for something that's not clinical, as well as all the other agencies that hire non-clinical. But it can be daunting trying to find the job and get the job. It takes months to get in, but boy, once you're in, it's a
Yeah.
dream.
So if you're looking for a job with the federal government as a civilian in these different agencies, where they go to the usajobs.gov, right? But how do people, or where do people go to enlist and learn more about the Public Health Service Commission Corps?
There's a website for the Commission Corps,
Okay.
ccms.gov. The Commission Corps something information system.
Okay. I'll look it up and I'll put it down below. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the place to start.
Overall, does that salary, is it comparable to like civilian PA pay, or how does that work?
So when you work as a civil servant, you might start off as a physician assistant, GS11, step one, you might be like 55, 60, 65,000. But as time goes by and you work your way up to GS11, step 10, or GS12, your pay will go up comparably, and you might end up at like in the 90s or around 100,000.
So we're talking about in today's like if you were joining today, there are some jobs that are only paying 55, 60,000 in the Commission Corps.
No, that's
Oh, okay.
civil service. Commission
Yeah.
Corps, you start off actually a little bit lower, but with each promotion and as time goes by and you add more years, your pay goes up dramatically. So the pay starts off a little bit lower, but the benefits kind of make up for that because the benefits are better in PHS than they are in civil service. They're not bad in civil service.
Most people are probably around 110, well, the average is 115. To ask them to go to a job that's making half that is pretty difficult. But I see what you're saying is if you can stick with it and you put in the years, then it starts going up exponentially. And then you've got those benefits.
And we have a pension. So you don't have to invest any money. I mean, people do put money in the thrift savings plan, which is the federal retirement account, but you get a pension anywhere from 50 to 75% of your base pay when you retire, in addition to your Social Security, because we pay in Social Security just like everyone else does.
Yeah.
You join because of the opportunity to serve the American public. And we really took that to heart. You won't thrive you won't survive if you don't want to do that job because
Yeah.
it's not for people who are just trying to make money. Job satisfaction. I mean, I went to work every day at the FDA and I protected the American public from dishonest manufacturers and from products that were not safe. And I mean, we did a really good job of it. The benefits are great, the retirement is amazing, but it really pales in comparison to what drives you day to day. I look forward to going to work every day. I love my job. I love my coworkers, civilian and PHS, but there are a lot of PHS at the FDA. So we were steeped in it, and I just love it.
Well, thank you so much, Philip, for joining us today and sharing all of your stories and letting us know about this unique opportunity that I'm sure most PAs and NPs don't even really know about.
So I was really excited to have an opportunity to share this because I hope that it will reach someone who's at that interface in their career where this might be a good option for them.
There's no getting around it. That low salary is pretty terrible for PAs and NPs and what we could make entry level somewhere else. But I do see all the benefits that Philip listed. I see that you could have a career that is really rewarding and fulfilling and have that pension, which is something that is pretty much non existent anywhere else in the world of medicine. And as Philip touched on, there are so many different options of types of jobs that you can do within the public health service and the commission corps. And I've got some people lined up to do some interviews with some pretty exciting and different opportunities. Once I get those videos done, they'll be here at the end of this video. Until then, enjoy the ones that I put up for you. Thanks so much for joining me today. Take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.